Have you ever noticed how some of the most intelligent people you know suddenly disappear from the spotlight? They stop engaging in shallow conversations, step back from the noise, and retreat into silence. From the outside, it may look like withdrawal, but beneath the surface, something much deeper is happening. Carl Jung believed that true intelligence isn't just about quick thinking or clever words. It's about perceiving the unconscious forces at play beneath life's surface. And when highly intelligent people see these hidden truths, they often reach a point of clarity. Much of what society celebrates is illusion. The games of status validation and endless distraction no longer hold meaning. This realization doesn't make them weak. It makes them awake. And sometimes awakening requires vanishing, not to escape life, but to return to it more whole, more authentic, and more powerful. In this video, we'll explore the one thing all highly intelligent people eventually realize, and why their disappearance is not an ending but the beginning of something profound. Carl Jung often spoke about the difference between the persona and the self. The persona is the mask we wear to move through society. It helps us adapt, perform roles, and gain approval. The self, however, is our deeper center, our wholeness, our authentic essence. For most people, the persona feels enough. They are content with fitting in, chasing recognition, and playing the roles expected of them. But highly intelligent people often see through the mask earlier. They recognize that much of what society celebrates, status validation, surface-level success, is only a performance. This realization can be disillusioning, even painful. Because once you see the illusion, you can no longer unsee it. Jung described this as an encounter with the collective unconscious, the deeper field of archetypes and truths that lies beneath the surface of human life. Intelligent people, often more sensitive to these archetypal patterns, begin to sense that what most people call life is only a fragment. The constant pursuit of being liked, admired, or envied feels shallow compared to the vast inner reality waiting to be explored. This is where the vanishing begins. It is not cowardice. It is not failure. It is the refusal to keep dancing to the music of illusion. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires a withdrawal from the noise of collective expectations. Intelligent people vanish not to escape life, but to reclaim their connection to the self. Projection plays a role here as well. Society often projects its fears onto those who step away. The person who vanishes is called arrogant, antisocial, or too much. But in truth, they are simply refusing to play roles that no longer fit. Jung warned that projections say more about the projector than the projected. When people criticize the one who withdraws, they are often expressing their own fear of facing silence, of meeting their own soul. Complexes also explain why intelligent people feel the need to vanish. A complex is a cluster of emotions and memories formed around an old wound. The collective culture itself is full of complexes: fear of failure, obsession with image denial of mortality. Intelligent people notice these collective complexes playing out everywhere in politics and media, even in everyday conversation. Once they see it, the superficial chatter of daily life feels unbearable, and so they disappear. But the disappearance is not emptiness. It is full of meaning. Jung compared this to the archetype of the hermit, or the wise old man figures, who step away from society not out of disdain, but out of necessity. In myth, the hermit retreats to the mountains to gain wisdom, only to return later with deeper truth. Intelligent people who vanish are walking this archetypal path. Jung also noted the danger of inflation when the ego identifies too much with knowledge or insight. Intelligent people must be especially careful here. Their vanishing is not meant to elevate themselves above others, but to humble themselves before the deeper truths of the psyche. The authentic retreat is not about superiority. It is about integration. To the outside world, their silence may look like loss. But Jung would argue it is a threshold. In silence, the unconscious begins to speak. Dreams carry new messages. Synchronicities appear. Inner voices long buried finally rise. This is why vanishing is not absence. It is presence with the self, rather than the persona. So why do intelligent people vanish? Because they realize that without this retreat, they will forever be trapped in the shallow game of appearances. They vanish to shed the false, to confront the shadow, and to discover the deeper wholeness of the self. This is the one thing they all eventually realize: the persona is not enough. And until they vanish into silence, into reflection, into depth, they cannot truly return to life as themselves. Transformation begins the moment you understand that vanishing is not disappearance. It is rebirth. For highly intelligent people, the decision to step back is not about rejecting the world. It is about creating space to see the world more clearly. Jung would call this the movement from persona to self, from illusion to authenticity. Stage 1. The withdrawal into silence. The first stage of this transformation is withdrawal. At first, it feels like exhaustion. Intelligent people often reach a breaking point where small talk feels hollow, ambitions feel shallow, and the noise of constant validation becomes unbearable. They sense that staying in the crowd means staying asleep. Withdrawal looks like saying no more often. It looks like stepping back from toxic conversations, declining invitations that drain the soul, and creating time for solitude. Jung warned that the collective has a powerful pull. It wants you to conform, to wear the mask, to play along. Withdrawal is the radical refusal of that demand. This stage is misunderstood by others. Society calls it arrogance. Friends call it distance. But Jung would say it is individuation, beginning an inward turning, that makes possible the discovery of the self. Stage 2. The encounter with the shadow. Silence is never empty. When intelligent people withdraw, they meet what they once avoided: the shadow. The shadow is everything we exile: anger, loneliness, unacknowledged fears. In the crowd, it was easy to ignore these feelings, drowned out by noise and distraction. In solitude, the shadow comes forward. This confrontation can feel like a storm. Memories resurface. Old wounds demand recognition. The intelligent mind trained to analyze cannot simply think its way out. Jung said the shadow must be faced, not solved. It must be felt, integrated, honored as part of the whole. For highly intelligent people, this stage is humbling. Knowledge alone cannot carry them through. They must feel what they once dismissed. They must sit with their humanity, not just their intellect. This is why many vanish, because the work of integrating the shadow requires space, privacy, and silence. Stage 3. The transformation into depth. Once the shadow is faced, a new kind of strength emerges. The sensitivity that once felt like a burden becomes discernment. The silence that once felt like emptiness becomes clarity. Jung described this as the alchemical process, the lead of suffering turned into the gold of wisdom. At this stage, intelligent people no longer crave the stage. They no longer need the applause. They are not interested in being admired for their mask. They would rather be real than be celebrated. They begin to value truth over image depth, over speed presence, over performance. This transformation also shifts how they relate to others. They no longer chase relationships that drain them. They choose fewer but deeper connections. They stop performing for approval and start speaking from authenticity. To some, this looks like distance. But in truth, it is intimacy, because real intimacy requires showing up as the self, not the mask. The no more threshold. Every transformation contains a threshold, the moment of no more. For highly intelligent people, this moment sounds like no more pretending I don't see the illusion. No more performing for applause. No more betraying my soul to fit in. This is not bitterness. It is clarity. It is the calm refusal to participate in games that no longer matter. It is the declaration I will not abandon myself again. Jung would call this individuation reaching a critical turning point. It is the moment when the individual stops living according to collective scripts and begins living from their own center. The return is the self. The final stage of transformation is return. Disappearance is not permanent. The archetype of the hermit always includes a return, bringing wisdom back to the community. Highly intelligent people eventually re-emerge, but they do so differently. They no longer seek the crowd's approval. They no longer need to be the smartest voice in the room. They carry a quiet presence, a depth that speaks without shouting. Their vanishing was not escape. It was preparation. In returning, they embody what Jung described as a self, the integrated whole, where shadow and light, intellect and feeling persona and authenticity come together. When they return, they bring gifts: clarity, compassion, discernment. They may not speak often, but when they do, it cuts through illusion. They may not stay in the spotlight, but their presence changes the atmosphere. This is the paradox of their vanishing. It made them more whole, and therefore more powerful, living beyond the persona. The transformation, then, is not about rejecting intelligence, but about deepening it. Highly intelligent people realize that intellect without depth is shallow, that brilliance without authenticity is empty. Their vanishing is the bridge from intellect to wisdom, from persona to self. And in that journey, they discover the deepest truth. It is better to be whole than to be admired. It is better to be real than to be liked. It is better to vanish for a season than to live forever as a mask. The gift of their silence. So the next time you notice someone highly intelligent vanish, don't assume they are lost. They may be walking the inner path. Jung described the path through shadow into wholeness. Their silence may not be absence, but presence. Presence with themselves, with the unconscious, with the truths that cannot be spoken in noise. And when they return, they will not come back as the mask. They will come back as the self. And that is why vanishing is not the end. It is the most intelligent thing they could ever do. The truth is, this highly intelligent people do not vanish because they are weak. They vanish because they see what others cannot, the illusion of masks. The emptiness of shallow validation, the noise that drowns the soul. Jung taught that individuation requires stepping back from the persona and returning to the self. And sometimes that means disappearing for a season, but vanishing is not the end. It is the threshold. In silence, the shadow is faced. In solitude, wisdom is born. And in returning, they carry a depth that cannot be shaken, a clarity that cuts through illusion, a presence that speaks louder than noise. So if you feel yourself pulling away, trust the process. It may look like absence, but it is the beginning of your true presence. If this message resonated with you, share your reflections into the comments, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Together, we are creating a community where depth is honored and authenticity is celebrated.